Hello, fellow researchers. It's Dr. G. One of the many important things that you have to think about when you're developing a survey or any sort of marketing research is to really determine the best types of questions to get the information that you need. And many of us know what we need, and you should be doing that way prior to ever picking up your pencil or tapping on your computer to draft your questions. But when you start to craft your questions, there are a set of best practices that really need to be followed so that you get the information back that you need from your respondents. The other important thing to think about is that we not introduce bias into our survey, or that we craft our questions so that we don't have any information that might confuse a respondent or even get misinformation that will taunt your results in the end. So this topic for this week is question development strategies that you should really employ when creating your survey. So there are a few things that you need to understand for today. Describing the pitfalls of many surveys, and if you've taken some, you'll see these. Identifying good from poorly written questions, and then developing your survey instrument for the semester marketing research project. So there's a couple of things that you should be working on now, and that will be addressed. The first one is the assignment, where you are going to craft your questions that we will pilot prior to you putting in your final survey instrument. And then the second thing is creating or working through an activity I have on rephrasing bad questions. So let's get started. First of all, your third assignment is developing your survey instrument that you will be deploying out to your sample that you're trying to obtain. So what this is really designed to do is start to pull together all of the concepts that you've learned so far in class and creating a survey that will feed your results in your research report. So your first task is to create a survey questionnaire based on your research topics. So this means 8 to 10 questions, or 8 to 12. You may have more if you have a number of demographic questions and things like that, but really want the meat of your survey, the information you're looking for, to be short. So think about it that way. Use at least 2 different types of questions. And you'll see that from the last video that we did on types of questions. Follow the survey design best practices that we're going to discuss today and that we've discussed in previous videos. So the second task is for you to create an introduction to its intended purpose. So respondents understand why they're being asked to participate in the survey. This is really important. This is whether somebody decides to take your survey or not. And so in the next video that we're going to watch, I'm going to walk you through recruiting respondents. And part of that is to have both your promotional materials clear in understanding and the introduction right in the survey. So this is what we're going to be working towards. So as you watch this video, I want you to think about the things that are important. All right, there is an activity that we will be doing in this class, and that's taking from this particular video questions that you are going to rephrase into good questions. So you could take this out now before you watch any further. That might help you in understanding these concepts, or you can complete it right after the video, whichever works best for you. So let's get started. Why is it important to create good questions? It's good because it will help boost your response rates. You know, the last thing we want to do is to get somebody excited about taking a survey and then they get frustrated because they don't know how to answer, or that they think maybe there's some bias. You don't want to lose your respondents, and it's better to measure your results. If you have a lot of skipped questions, we may have to throw those questions out. So there's really interesting nuances here. So the way you design your question isn't always the way that you speak naturally. You have to be very clear, and you have to make sure that you don't lead the respondent into a particular answer, because that is just going to bias the information one way or the other, and it will not be true marketing research. It will be maybe research answers that you want to get, which isn't what we're looking for here. We want to be good ethical marketers, and that means writing questions well. So the first thing, I'm going to go through a series of different types of bad questions. The first is avoid leading questions. And a leading question is just that you have an adjective in your question that causes bias. And we do this unintentionally. This is not something that it's just natural for us to do this. And so when we are creating when we're making a mistake by using something leading, it's important to have a pilot or somebody in a neutral front making sure that your question isn't leading. And I see this as one of the most difficult things to do for students, because or anybody working in an organization, because we all have our own opinions, and we might be doing a survey to kind of get what we want. So the person on the other end reading through these results will clearly catch on to this. So let me show you some examples. The first is a bad question. Should concerned parents use infant car seats? In this case, okay, what parent isn't going to be concerned? So if I am given the word concerned, if I'm not believing in car seats, what does that make me look like, right? Like a bad parent. So the question should be phrased as something like, do you think special car seats should be required for infant passengers? Or, just take out the word concern. Should parents use infant car seats? It's going to give you the same answers, but you're not making somebody feel that they're unconcerned. Get the point there? All right, next we're going to move on to loaded questions. Now, the loaded question is a question where it's written in a way that forces the respondent into an answer that doesn't accurately reflect his or her opinion or situation. So a bad question is, where do you enjoy drinking beer? Now, in this case, you are assuming that the person is drinking beer, is a beer drinker. So you may think, well, maybe the first question is where do you enjoy drinking beer? Or do you drink beer? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, then you could follow up with this question. If the answer is no, you skip the question because they don't enjoy drinking beer. Another thing you could do in this case is, this may be an appropriate question if your population are of people who already drink beer. This is not a loaded question if they already drink beer. If you know that 100%. So that's what you either have to lead with that and ask them that question, or have a population of people who do, or you fix the question. All right, now let's look at overlapping incomplete and complete responses. This is so common. I see this on nearly maybe 50% of the surveys that I read and edit. So your responses should almost always be mutually exclusive and definitive. Don't confuse or frustrate your responses. So here's one that happens all the time. How long have you been in your current occupation? Perfectly good question. Now the answer choices are what is difficult here. So you've got 1 to 2 years, okay, 2 to 5 years, and 5 to 10 years. So look closely at this. What's wrong with this? The first thing that I see is that, what if I don't have an occupation? there's no option for that. There's not currently not working or 0 or, they start with 1 year. So there's an assumption being made here that you are working. And, maybe if you have a population of people who are working, this is okay. But I still think you always have to err on the side of always putting, don't have an occupation or 0 years. Now here we've got the problem between 1 to 2 years and 2 to 5 years. So if I've worked in my current occupation 2.5 years, what am I going to do here? Okay, so 1 to 2 years, 3 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years. Or you could do up to 2 to 5 years, over 5 to 10 years, over 10. But see, I wouldn't, if I worked at a place 2 years, I wouldn't know which one to choose. Or 5 years, I wouldn't know which one to choose. So this needs to be fixed. What type of vehicle do you own? First of all, how do we know they own a vehicle unless you are doing, a 2-door, a 4-door, a van, a hatchback, a truck, an SUV, a sedan. Okay, so here's what I think the issue is what if I have a van with 4 doors? What if I have a hatchback with 2 doors? You can't mix these two together because they're not mutually exclusive. Get it? So make this 2 different questions. All right, vague questions. Vague questions is that you make the respondent guess what the response is you're looking for. And but the answers may take it in a different direction, or it could be specific with time frames. So here we go. The bad question is, how do we improve our food menu? The issue is improve could be taken in many ways. It could be, could you improve my delivery service? Could you improve my menu? The size of the menu, the quality. It's just very unclear what you're asking here. The bad question would also be, how likely are you to purchase a product in the near future? The researcher is looking at, they don't know what the near future is, or the respondent. So be more specific. Say, in the next year, or the next month, or the next week, or so you can interpret near future in many ways. So be very clear and concise, particularly with time frames, particularly in the way what you're asking for. All right, ignoring cultural differences and sensitivity. So as you know, respondents in different regions can be sexual about certain topics related to income, sexual orientation, religion, personal care, and consumption use of certain products and services. So what is your household income? Below 45,000 or 45,000 or more? So this really is, if you're going to do a demographic question, you should really have more responses, because this might make the respondent feel like I'm below or the poverty line, or I'm above it. So okay, so which of the following have you consumed in the last 6 months? Beer, coffee, liquor, soft drink, tea, water. The question is, in these cases, the way, it's not that these are wrong questions. You should always add a prefer not to answer as an option. Because, some of these questions are sensitive, and always, always, always add that when you're asking a sensitive question. Most people don't. Most people will answer one of this, but it gives them a sense of, I'm okay and I'm going to finish the rest of the survey. Double-barreled questions. So this double-barreled is to make sure that each question focuses on one attribute or behavior. So this is an example of a bad question. Which delivery service do you consider the fastest and most economical? So what am I supposed to do here? What am I supposed to say? Are you asking me about how quick it is or how expensive it is? So think about if you're going to get food from a company like DoorDash, And it says right on there, you can get this in 20 minutes or less delivered to your home. That might be great if I have a bunch of people here and I've got a party and I can't wait, but most economical. Well, obviously, if they're going to make me charge more, these are two very different things. So what I would do is, in another bad question, what I would do in this case is I split them into two questions. Which service delivery do you consider the fastest? Which service delivery service do you consider most economical? I don't know which one to choose in this case. Bad question. How useful will textbook be for students and young professionals in this field? Okay, so here I've got two different things. I've got useful. Oh, no, sorry. Useful is good. I have students and young professionals. So the textbook could be very different for, are you asking me as a student and my general knowledge, or are you asking me as a young professional who isn't a student? These are two different segments. So separate these for each attribute. All right, do not assume prior knowledge or understanding. So this is no room for ambiguity. Don't rely on prior knowledge because somebody may not have it. So in this case, please look at our new logo. Insert the new logo here. To what extent do you agree that the new logo is an improvement on the current logo? Sure, you could put the Nike swoosh on there and maybe they change it into something else, but you can't assume that a person knows what the original logo looks like. So in this case, you just have to insert two images: existing logo, proposed logo, and then have them rate it. Second example, to what extent do you agree or disagree that there are enough arts and culture activities in your area? So here again, we've got to what extent, how do I know what the arts and what the cultural areas are? You may want to put some examples down there. To what extent do you agree or disagree that there are enough arts and cultural activities in your local area? By local area, we mean a 10-minute drive from your home. So yes, in this case, you need to be clear on what the local area is. So I live in a fast-growing community that has two distinct cities. So is my local area is it the county? Is it, the college town area? Is it further out? So that's what you have to do there. Do not use absolutes in questions. Absolutes, this will really be difficult for your respondents because the feedback isn't useful. You're forcing them into a corner that they may not want to be. Do you always eat breakfast? Yes or no? How many days a week do you usually eat breakfast? This is a better question because, today I slept in late. I didn't eat breakfast. I went to lunch. Maybe you go to work right away and you don't have time for breakfast, but you would like to eat breakfast. So maybe 3 out of 4 days you do. So don't use a yes or no with an adjective such as always, all, every, ever. So that's something to think about. Speak your respondent's language. Okay, this is really important, particularly the more technical or academic or even industry specific. So avoid acronyms, technical terms, and jargon. So example, do you own a tablet PC? Well, what the heck is a tablet PC? I don't know what that is. I know what a tablet is. I know what a PC is, but I don't know what a tablet PC is. So instead, you might want to say, do you own an iPad? Do you own an Android tablet? Just give them some examples of what it might be. What is the state of the cleanliness in your room? I don't. That's kind of that's really not very clear to me. How clean was the room you were in? All right. The state of cleanliness sounds like it's, some kind of political statement. Anyway, avoid beginning with demographic questions. Okay, this is one that can be controversial. A lot of people put demographics up front, and this is generally when you are doing, a survey maybe where you have a really big population and you have a lot of people you can reach out to and you just want to get them through it right away. Or you want them to not make it through the survey. You're just doing what we would call sort of like a weed out question or a question. You don't want to waste somebody's time. So anyway, my opinion and the opinion of most researchers will say that you leave the demographics to the end. And there's a lot of good reasons for this. And sometimes if you're doing somewhat of, maybe a sensitive topic, or, people just are in a place where they're not comfortable with understanding what the survey questions are, it can feel intrusive. They're not comfortable answering without seeing the questions first. So likely they will not complete the entire survey. You're more likely to volunteer this type of information once they're sure the survey is legitimate. So I always put my demographic questions at the back. And if you recall from our variables section, the demographic questions are things like age and income and sexual orientation, gender, things that people may not be comfortable with giving you up front. Inadequate question options. Check to be sure that the possible answers include all of the scenarios. So this was I talked about this earlier. So how long have you been working for this job? 1 to 2 years, 2 to 5 years, 5 or more. Remember when I asked this question before? You don't have all of the options. So here you could say, this is still not good. Less than a year, 1 to 2 years, I would put greater than or equal to 2 years to 5 years, greater than 5 or more years. So this one here needs to be cleaned up a bit here. So I would do 1 to 2 years, greater than 2 years to 5 years, 5 or more years. That's a better question. Sorry about that. Grammatical inconsistencies. So it's easy to overlook grammatical inconsistencies. I'm a stickler for grammar. When I edit your survey, you're going to go, oh my gosh, I can't believe she did all this. That's just because I believe in clear, good, simple questions that are well written. So a bad question is, how happy have you been with the support you've received from your manager? Okay. So how happy I am with my support. 1, very satisfied to 5, very satisfied. Very unsatisfied to 1, very satisfied, which is fine. How happy have you been with the support you have received from your manager? 1, very unhappy, 2 or 5, very happy. So what are the differences here? How happy have you been with the support you received from your manager? How happy have you been with the support you've received from your manager? Okay, this is, I'm trying to find the inconsistency here. But this one should be, how happy are you with the support you've received from your manager? It shouldn't be, have you been? So sorry, I'll clean up that question too. Anyway, check your grammar. Grammar check is good. All right, negative question wording. Negative question wording makes respondents do a double take when trying to respond. So this means they usually include like a not in the question. Then they ask the respondents to agree or disagree. So when you have a not in there, you don't know exactly what you're asking me. It's a double negative. So do you agree or disagree that the arts are not recognized as a valuable tool? So do you think the arts are recognized as a valuable tool? So just do not put the not in there because you have a double negative in the answer choices and they don't know how to respond. Okay, here's one that I want you to think about. So I love open-ended questions because it adds color to your results. You can get asking the why question after something will give you more insight. So, but be cautious of open-ended questions unless it is a qualitative survey, of which you are not doing. You're doing a quantitative survey. too many open-ended questions is just too fatiguing for customer or for the respondents. You can have a couple, 2 or 3 maybe, but if it's more than that, you're going to lose people. They'll get fatigued. They're tired of it. So what this is going to do is it's going to cause a lot of missing data. So choose wisely and make sure that your open-ended questions are, they're just not too many, and don't ask them to write paragraphs of information. Just a short, complete thought will be good enough. But I am a fan of open-ended questions. It's going to give you so much more insight that when you start to tell your story about your results, you can add a couple of bits and pieces in here, and it's just going to make your results feel more real. So I've already talked about survey fatigue. This is something you have to be really conscious of. This is why I like a short survey. I like to tell people up front in their introduction how long it's going to take them on average. But if your surveys are too long, they're confusing, they have poorly written questions, all of these things are going to make them bail. We don't want them to bail. We want good, solid data and have them answer every question as possible. You need to be very respectful of their time and effort, and this is why up front, I think it's really important for that introduction piece to include how long expected is to complete it. So how do you get away from this? You're going to have some questions that will be similar. And when you go through the pilot process, your evaluators will tell you this. So throw out every possible question that's redundant or not needed. Keep it simple and only use the questions that are needed. So this is a lot of information, and that is why I'm having you do that rephrasing bad questions activity, so you can get used to identifying bad questions and rewriting them into a good question. So here's what I want you to think about. Can you determine the difference between a poorly and well-written question? What strategies will you take to make sure you don't introduce bias into your survey? And then have you drafted your questions for your survey? You need to start working on this, and hopefully this and the other videos in this module are going to get you headed in that direction. Okay? So I hope that this makes a lot of sense. I know it's a lot of information, but that's the reason why marketing research is so valuable to strategy, is that the data we collect from consumers is going to be able to help you better understand whether or not your strategy is on point, and to help you in telling your story to those decision makers. Marketing research is a lucrative field, and as a researcher, this is where we're really putting our science hat on. And I want you to really think about how important this information is that you're going to be serving up into your research report. So if you have questions or comments, feel free to reach out to me. Email me from Canvas. If you're interested in learning more from the Marketing Doctor, feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I have videos on all kinds of fun topics. So take care. Happy writing questions, happy editing, and I will see you soon.